Thank you, Koga and Ted and Jim, for inviting me in here to talk about what is probably the second biggest blessing that's been bestowed on our nation in recent years from our industry, first of which is the unconventional natural gas. Certainly it's going to present challenges to us, but I think, as been alluded to several times, I think we're all up to it. I also wanted to thank Dave Lazar for his keynote speech. I thought it was very good. I think it caused us all to think, and he truly is a leader in our industry. I've been sitting there for a few minutes trying to think how I can get cave, naked, and nuts all in the same sentence and get away with it, and I concluded I just can't do it. But what I can do is I'm having them bring a little jar of what we produce in our business over here and see if I can get Jim Brown to drink from that after our panel discussion's over. But we'll see. What I'd like to do today is talk a little bit about some statistics, a little bit about what we're seeing today as a demonstration to the depth of the portfolio that's out there that we've already uncovered in the unconventional oil space. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some of the proactive approaches that Newfield has taken in building an inventory that's largely Rockies-based, that now numbers about 1 million net acres and approximately 2 billion barrels a net resource. We've talked publicly much about some of the other resources that we've accumulated in our portfolio at Newfield today. A week and a half ago, we unveiled the expansion of our cornerstone position in oil, and it's an expansion in the Uinta Basin, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that. And then we'll visit on the challenges, as we see it anyway, in the unconventional oil relative to the unconventional gas. I think we've all got our mind around some of the things that we're attacking there. There are a few things that are unique to oil, and we'll explore those a bit. This slide is much the same, and once again, I'm fortunate that the numbers match with what Chuck showed earlier. And this is just a demonstration of the level of activity that's a result of what we're uncovering in the unconventional oil space today. Roughly half of all the rigs, 883 at the time this was put together, is attacking oil today, and that's an increase 2x of what it was just 18 months ago. This slide represents the unconventional resources, both in gas and oil and wet gas, across the United States. And what we did is we pulled out that incremental rig count over the last 18 months, and that's what's represented here. And it should be no surprise that the single largest increase we've seen over that period of time is in the Eagle Ford and then out in the Permian. I think the Granite Wash and the Bakken had a big run before we got to the last 18 months, and therefore they're third and fourth. But you can just see the tremendous amount of activity that's attributed to this, and clearly this doesn't look like a house of cards or a Ponzi scheme. Once again, I guess I need to check with Chuck before we come to these panels. This is a very similar slide to what he had presented. Has a little bit more granularity, and he had alluded to this. This slide represents domestic oil production. In green, this is our onshore production over time, over a very similar time frame. We layer in blue the Gulf of Mexico, and in red Alaska, and then we also have oil prices demonstrated in the black line. And I think it's apparent that there has been a tremendous stimulus provided by the prospects of long-term oil and the $100 zip code, and also the technological advances that we've seen as a result of our confidence in getting oil and gas out of what was once just known as source rock, and also the application of horizontal drilling and multi-stage fracking. It's incredible. And then within our shopping, you can see it's really allowed us to do here recently what it took Prudhoe Bay to do previously, and that is to change the decline in domestic production, and we should all be proud of what we've accomplished. Part of that is certainly our ability to apply these lessons learned much faster than what we did before. I think we've had the advantage of natural gas and being able to rapidly assimilate those into our programs as we look into these oil plays. And at least within Newfield, we once had a lot of discussions, is gas the new coal? And here lately, some of the discussions we're having is oil the new gas, and how we think about what this industry is going to do in response to finding such a large resource. So this is what Newfield's doing in our part in order to expand the resource base. This is just the oil developments that we have accumulated in the organization today. Capital budget's about $1.9 billion, and we're essentially spending all of that, and I'm glad the economics were supported by Dan. Virtually every rig that we have in the company today is oil-directed. The oil developments that we have today, the first two here are right here in our own backyard in the Rocky Mountains. The Uinta Basin, we have historically run about 4 to 5 rigs. That number is rapidly increasing, and soon we'll be up to 9 rigs. The Williston Basin, 5 rigs, position we started building back when oil was $40, and I can tell you it was an uneconomic position at the time, and certainly that's changed today. We recently announced a 5,000 barrel a day well, and that was not in what has been our conventional well, which is about 10,000 feet. That was actually in a 5,000-foot lateral. The Maverick Basin is our newest entry. It's our development as we're moving the Eagle Ford west to the border, U.S. border with Mexico. We've got a couple rigs running there and rapidly learning and applying some of those same learnings that we've had from some of our other resource plays in the oil window. The Granite Wash, we were one of the early entrants there, and we continue to see very strong results. We're attacking the liquids-rich Marmaton, and we typically have 4 rigs, if not more, running in this play. And then finally, the oily Woodford. You may or may not be familiar with this. The Woodford shale gas was our first play that we had identified as far as unconventional gas. Became a very large position for us. We have about 165,000 acres. Fortunately for us, at the time we put that position together, we understood exactly where the oil was because it's where we elected not to lease, because at the time we just never thought we'd be in a position to extract oil from these shales. Well, certainly how times change. So when the advent of the liquids in the Barnett and some of these other plays in the Bakken, we just pulled out an old map. We knew where it was. We went and started leasing, and we've built a position today where we've basically redeployed our entire gas-directed rig into the oil window, and we're having great success there as well. And it's not all in development. We need to make sure the pipeline's loaded. We're certainly doing that. We have oil assessments in our own backyard as well in the southern Alberta Basin in northwest Montana. That's a new position. We've expanded now up to 320,000 acres in what is a really exciting play as we look forward to apply some of the same lessons that we're learning in the Williston Basin immediately to the west. And then the Maverick Basin is not all about the Eagle Ford either. There's a lot of other oil resources there, and we're going to be continually pushing forward to assess that position. At the end of the day, what does this mean to Newfield? We're going to be able to put numbers up this year that are 40 to 50% domestic oil growth. Very proud of those. And again, as I've already referenced, we've got about 1 million net acres and 2 billion barrels of resource that we're targeting. Here, I'd like to just spend a moment and talk a little bit about the expansion that we've made in the Uinta Basin. As the timeline is demonstrated at the bottom in the cartoon that you see in the center there, we entered back in 2004, and it's when I moved out of Houston and came up to Denver. And since that time, we've continued to expand our position. Once just a small piece in between the giant Altamont Bluebell fields and natural buttes. I think we broke out of some previously conventional thought on where the resource was accumulated in the Uinta Basin. We started under the cover of night and kind of in a stealth way drill some wells up to the north, and we found out that those previous models were incorrect. We continue to see that over and over again when we challenge some of the conventional wisdom. As a result of that, we went on a leasing campaign, and we put together 3 positions with the Ute Indian tribes as we moved to the north. And then most recently, we did an acquisition earlier this year. So we've now expanded our position from about 80,000 acres up to about a 250,000 acres in this position. We're attacking multiple horizons, and not that anybody cares today with the current gas price situation, but you should know that this entire area is underlain by natural gas. We've drilled 5 or 6 wells into that section. All were successful, and there will be a day when we live in that Dan's $5 to $6.50 world that we'll be able to attack this, and this is once again another giant resource with several TCF underneath us that will all be HBP'd by the positions that we're targeting in our oil developments. This cartoon represents the kind of the things that we really get excited about when we look at some of these unconventional oil developments. As I already referenced, we've got 250,000 acres here, but it also has some of the other things that we look at. Continuous acreage position across the entire area, essentially. High working interest, 70%, and we control it. It's entirely operated by Newfield. We can control the applications of technology, the pace in the capital investments that we make in these areas. Due to the size, that gives us leverage, and with that, we believe that we are an industry leader as far as the cost structure. That's translated once again into returns in all the plays that we're pursuing out here, in excess of 100% return. And as I'll demonstrate on the next slide, we are looking at multiple different horizons in this section. We're targeting not only oil and gas, we're targeting horizontal, and we're targeting vertical horizons as well. This cartoon, and I'll kind of page through it here, depicts the acreage position we have in our three most prominent prospects that we have in the area. The Green River is one that we've historically been targeting for years, and as I alluded to earlier, we've advanced this to the north where we've drilled 300 wells as we've expanded this Green River, which is a very large water flood that's been out there for years. Well in excess of 4,000 locations left to drill here, and this is an area that we have historically drilled about 400 wells a year. Go in and lay in the next horizon, and this is one that we unveiled a week and a half ago. I think industry started to awaken to this opportunity. We originally started targeting it a few years ago selectively in vertical wells and doing some vertical testing of this that realized that, in fact, that there isn't just sands in Monument Butte. There are carbonates. They're laterally continuous, and through vertical testing, we got enough confidence to drop in 5 or 6 horizontal wells. We really have enjoyed the success as a result of that. And now both in the normally pressured and the pressured section, we believe there are over 1,800 locations that we can drill of this type. And then finally, the Wasatch. This is one that our friends to the north and El Paso and others have been pursuing in the pressured section, and Altamont Bluebell, and is obviously Jim to my right here in the Natural Buttes area has been a gas play. What we found here is we've got a really nice oil accumulation, both again in the pressured and the normally pressured section that underlies this entire area, and we've had good success thus far, very early on in drilling and assessing this acreage position. So, all in all, well in excess of 6,000 locations for us to drill. It seems like a career for us. I'm heading out there tonight, and I'm talking to people and thinking, being able to communicate to them that their children are going to be to continue developing this field. It's of that size. The well cost, unlike some of the other plays that we've already talked about, these are very inexpensive wells. By and large, the Green River wells are less than $1 million. The others are all less than $3 million. So very attractive to us. We're able to drill Green River today in about 4 to 5 days. Any other ones, we're cutting the days off rapidly. High returns, and in total, we're looking at over 600 to 700 million barrels, a net resource to Newfield located in this position alone, and we control it, and it's all HBP, or it will be soon. So finally, in closing, we can all talk about some of the challenges associated with the unconventional natural gas plays. These were some of the things that came to my mind as we were thinking about what are the things associated with unconventional oil, and how do they differ? First, complex reservoir behaviors. This is very, very complicated stuff, and being able to figure out how these reservoirs behave in the subsurface is a challenge. And a bigger challenge to that is how do you actually obtain these reservoir fluids at reservoir conditions and model their behavior? It's evolving. We're getting better at it, but there's still a lot to be learned. It is no surprise that due to just the size of the molecules we're dealing with today in oil relative to natural gas, conductivity in the fracture systems and flow mechanics are different. We understand that. I think everybody's accepted that. But we're still learning in very specific manners of how areas will need to be stimulated differently relative to natural gas. Predicting oil in place, I don't know if it's an art or a science in these types of plays. We're still learning about that, and clearly spacing will differ. How we drain natural gas accumulations in these shale gas versus oil. The next one is one that we always have a lot of fun with. I mean, you get a bunch of production and completions engineer in the room, and you want to toss in a hand grenade. All you got to do is ask, well, tell me, guys, what's better, toe up or toe down? And you can walk out of the room and come back 3 hours, and they're still arguing about it, right? So this is something that we're still investigating, and there's still a lot of lessons learned. Just related in regards to liquid holdup, how do we get this fluid out of the ground timely? And this relates to the artificial lift. Virtually all these wells go on artificial lift. They all go on it very early. but the types of artificial lift that we're finding, it differs well to well, and in addition to that, we're also finding that over the life of the well, we may need to change the artificial lift mechanisms that we use in these fields. And finally, and in closing, transportation and marketing. Much of this large unconventional oil resources and not in areas where we historically have moved a lot of oil. So making sure that we get the infrastructure in place to get it out in a timely fashion that's uninterrupted, and we have the available pipeline capacity or trucking capacity is something that's going to continue to evolve. I'm convinced that we can continue to get Detroit to make more trucks for us. We're certainly falling behind there. But if Detroit could just send us some truck drivers with a good CDL license that can pass a drug test, I think we'd all be well served as well. So anyway, that's all I have, and thank you very much, and look forward to the Q&A.
Thanks, Gary. I think you, as all of the panelists before, have articulated very well how our industry has innovated ways into solutions that we didn't 5 years ago think would exist. At this time, I'd like to open it up into the audience questions. And as you have a few moments to ponder some of those questions, I've got a few that I've written down myself that I'd like to pose to the panelists. So if you do have a question, please migrate to the mic, and I'll recognize you here. I've got a question for Chuck, because you mentioned that past several years out, the market valuation of those resources aren't recognized. So we certainly have across the panel several thousand wells, probably summed up 20 or 30,000 wells just with the companies here that need to be pulled forward and accelerated. What type of things is Noble doing to secure the supply chain to be able to accelerate that pace of development?